A mafia cartel appeared in our city, and civilians, united, decide to challenge criminal arbitrariness. Let's get started. The game begins with the distribution of cards to all players. There are two teams in the game, Mafia and civilians. Every night, the Mafia and Don wake up and kill one civilian. Players with peaceful roles wake up at night and try to check, plug, mine, or kill the Mafia, as well as heal or rescue civilians. Voting begins in the afternoon. Every peaceful player votes against those they suspect. At the same time, the Mafia sets up civilians, accusing them of lies and night murders. The one who receives the most votes leaves the table. In this case, the card is not opened. Let's move on to the players from the Mafia and Don map. The head of the Mafia is the Don card. When killing civilians at night, his vote can be decisive. Players from the Mafia and Don map account for about 30% of the total number of participants at the gaming table. At the command of the presenter, Mafia and the Don wakes up, and on the first night they get acquainted, and on the following nights they kill civilians. The advantage of the Mafia over civilians is that it knows the players of its team. The goal of the Mafia team is to kill all civilians in day and night voting. Let's move on to the team of civilians. They are divided into ordinary civilians without roles and civilians with roles. Civilians without a role can cast their vote only in the afternoon vote. At night, civilians sleep without a role. Role-playing civilians. The main role of civilians is the sheriff. At night, at the command of the host, you wake up and check on one of the players. The host will show you the status of this player. A thumbs up is a Mafia player. A thumbs down means a civilian. The next day, you already know whether to trust this player or not. Doctor, at night, at the command of the host, you wake up and point to the player you want to cure. If the Mafia or maniac got into it on the same night, then this player will not die. Your goal is to save those players from death who, in your opinion, may be civilians. Lady, at night, at the command of the host, you wake up and point to the player to whom you give immunity for the next day. If this player receives the most votes in the afternoon voting, he will not die. The goal is to save players you think are peaceful. Maniac. He plays for civilians. At night, at the command of the host, you wake up and point to the player you want to kill. The next morning, the player will die. Your goal is to kill players you think are the Mafia. Plug. At night, at the command of the host, you wake up and shut up any player. The next day, this player will not be able to speak or vote. The goal is to deprive the Mafia of the right to vote. Switchman. At night, at the command of the host, you wake up at the moment when you are hit by a Mafia or a maniac and transfer the shot to another player. In the morning, this player will die. The goal is to transfer the shot to the Mafia. Jailer. At night, at the command of the host, you wake up and point to a player whom you consider a Mafia. If the player is a Mafia, in the morning the host will announce that he is going to prison. This player does not have the right to vote, but you cannot vote for it either. Your goal is to put the entire Mafia in prison. The jailer is killed day or night. The Mafia is released from prison, and civilians can vote for this player again. Bomb. At night, at the command of the host, you wake up and mine a certain number of players at the table. The host will show how many players you can mine. Mining can only be done on the first and second nights. If you are killed, all the mined players will die with you. The goal is to mine the Mafia. Inverse. Play as civilians first. Don't wake up with the Mafia. When checking the sheriff or jailer, the host will show that you are a peaceful player. Once the entire Mafia is killed, the host will wake you up and you will turn into the last Mafia. The goal is to survive until the very end of the game, turn into the Mafia and win. Kamikaze. At night, at the command of the host, you wake up and point to a player whom you consider a Mafia or a werewolf. In the morning, if you guessed right, You and the verified player die. If the player is peaceful, then you stay alive. The only testing role that can find a werewolf before he turns into a mafia. The roles of civilians may not be all in the game, but the host will voice all the roles at night. Think if this is a role in the game, because the mafia can present itself as a non-existent role. At the games, it is forbidden to be rude and get personal. Our format is positive. We play closed door. This means that your card is not opened after you die, and no one knows exactly who you left. Good luck.